peace. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know, it's your boy Vic Slang Hope. And today I come to explain to y'all how to navigate the shelter system. Now, this is not just for somebody coming home from prison. This is also for people who are facing homelessness and other issues in their everyday life, right? And trying to get away from certain situations and they might not have nowhere else to go. For example, when I was in prison, before I got released, my plan was to go to Florida and to go to Miami and live with my uncle. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. It didn't fall into my lap like I expected. So then I had to go to a shelter system. I didn't want to go to certain neighborhoods. Definitely didn't want to go to my old neighborhood. So I wanted to move away from the situations that led me to go to prison in the first place. So what I decided to do was I went to the shelter, right? It was uncomfortable it was uncomfortable as hell, but I had to do what I had to do. So I decided that I was going to go to the shelter system. So the first thing that I had to do was I had to report to the main drop-off center in New York City, right? For every city is different. You got to find out what's the main drop-off center because you can't just go to any random shelter, right? They're going to tell you to go to the main drop-off center. So in New York City, I believe is on 30th Street. It's like 400 East 30th Street, something like that, I believe. But you can Google it up or you can ask somebody or however you figure it out, right? Get the information. I probably should put the link in the comment section. In the description. So you got to go to the drop-in center. When you go to the drop-in center, they're going to process your information. They're going to ask you, do you have family? Do you have anywhere you can go? You know, like the shelter, they try to make it seem like it's like the last resort. A lot of times, they always want you to stay with family because it's going to be better. Or so they say, right? Or so they think it is. So a lot of times, they're going to keep asking you, do you have family? Do you have anybody you can go with, friends, anything, right? You got to tell them no. Like, I don't got nobody. I might not have family. I got kicked out. Tell them whatever you tell them, right? Even if you tell them you got kicked out, a lot of times they will try to reconcile situations with your family. This is just how hard they go to try, because homelessness is a real big issue, especially in New York City. So a lot of times they try to keep people at home with their families instead of admitting them to the shelter. So after you get done with that, they'll ask you some information, right? You know, basic information about yourself, and then they'll register you, right? They'll set you up. They will also tell you, they probably also will tell you, I don't know if they tell you right then and there you have to go to welfare and open up a case. You know, it's all part of being in a shelter system. But usually you go to Bellevue men's shelter, you stay there for like a night, maybe two, then they ship you out to another shelter. They usually send people to Randall's Island. And at Randall's Island, you got to go through another intake where they're taking your information, and you're only going to stay at the shelter probably for like 2 weeks while they just take your information. They send you to the nurses. They send you to the doctor, whatever, get a physical, and you know they're just doing a little protocol. So you stay at the shelter for like about 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, sometimes it lasts a month. In my case, it lasted a month. After this time, they send you to your permanent shelter. So after you go through these two type of intakes, you go from the initial intake, getting registered, and then you go through the other intake. Then they send you to your permanent shelter. So when you get to your permanent shelter, this is where you're gonna get your counselor or your social worker, and they're gonna break down whatever they're gonna break down. So I think usually at this step, at your personal shelter, is when your counselor will tell you, oh, you need to go to HRA, you need to open a welfare case, you know, and you know she'll explain like what you got to do. They usually have a person that works with job readiness, right? That's supposed to help you get a job, etc., etc. So they usually feed you like 3 times a day. I believe they usually feed you your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And yeah, I think you meet up with your case manager like once a week, I believe, or every 2 weeks. I'm not so sure. I don't really fully remember. But this is just the process, right? Like once you get to a shelter, you get a case manager, and then you set up your goals and your plans. If you don't got a job, they got somebody that tries to help you out get jobs and stuff like that. And then so now to get to the environment, right? The actual environment. So when you go to the shelter system, you're going to be encountering a lot of people who have mental health issues, right? They say 35% of the people that are in the shelter system have mental issues, right? So you're going to be dealing with people that have like real severe issues, right? Mental issues. You're going to deal, like me, for example, like I have places to go. So I didn't really have to be there, but I wanted to be there because I just didn't want to bother nobody. And I also didn't want to be in certain areas, right, that will kind of like get me back into trouble. So being in the shelter and like just being around people who don't shower, being around people who have mental issues, being around people who might steal from you or do all type of stuff, right? Some of them are violent, so you gotta. It's almost like being in jail all over again. So I felt like I wasn't free. I felt like at some point I felt like I went from one jail to another jail, right? Just in the outside world, because I'm still. A lot of people that was locked up go to the shelter system. A lot of people's families don't support them. A lot of people don't have places to go. So a lot of people that were in jail do oftentimes end up going to the shelter system. A lot of times, oftentimes, people who have rape cases and or pedophiles, they go to the shelter because they usually live in homes that are next to a park or are in certain areas, and they just can't be there. So a lot of times they send them to Randall's Island to stay over there. So anyway, you're dealing with a lot of people who might really need to be there. So if you're a person that don't really need to be there, I suggest to really go somewhere else. It could be done if you could do that, right? If you can't, I'm just telling you, this is the things you're gonna get into. People might steal your stuff, might break into your room. If you got a lock, they usually give you a lock to put on your locker and keep your stuff safe. But like they usually got metal detectors too when you go into a shelter, right? They just want to keep people safe. But sometimes people sneak stuff in. So sometimes people be breaking people's locks. They go in there, take your stuff. Like you might be in danger. Like it's still a lot of issues that go on in the shelter system, right? So I think the main thing is sneak thieving, right? Like a lot of people be hooked on drugs. They have mental health issues. So people be just looking for a quick come up, like, and if you got something that people like, people might try to take that. So I lost about 2 pair of sneakers while I was in the shelter. Like a lot of my clothes, like I said, like the way I look, people used to look at me a certain way when I was in the shelter system, and a lot of people, even some of the workers, used to say like, you don't look like you belong here, like, which is again, right? It's like this stigma of like a homeless person looks a certain way, and when that's not necessarily true. Like a homeless person could be working, could be taking care of business, could be groomed, could be clean, and they could still be homeless. So that's another misconception I advise y'all not to fall into. So yeah, so this is some of the things that I experienced, right? Like people stole from me. People like being around people you don't want to. I was blessed to have my own room when I first went to the shelter, but like before I went to my permanent shelter, like I had to share beds with other people, and other people hygiene is not like yours. So and I didn't feel comfortable sleeping in a lot of those beds. I'm gonna be honest. Like I just didn't feel comfortable sleeping in a place where like so many people frequent, so many. Every different night. Sometimes your bed goes to somebody different. Like I'm kind of like a germaphobe in a way. So I kind of was just like, and shelters is not like the cleanest places, right? So when I got to my personal shelter, when I got to my main shelter, it was kind of hard for me to take showers there. It was kind of hard because they didn't really clean the shower area. But this is some of the things I had to go through. I had to go through these things to get to wherever I was trying to go. Like I was focused. I had a goal. While I was in the shelter, I was in the shelter for like about a year. I was also going to school. I was working. So this is just the things that kept me busy and kept me focused. Now, you're gonna have a lot of issues if you've been incarcerated. You're gonna have a lot of issues getting housing on your own. Like a lot of landlords discriminate against people that have felonies. A lot of landlords just like I don't even understand why they do background checks. And if they do, I don't understand why. Period. Just once you got a you got the negative thing on your background check that you've been incarcerated, they just automatically like don't try to rent to you, or they try to rent to you properties that nobody really want to live at, right? Like they try to rent me places that maybe was like a train and maybe two buses away from a train station, like places that people don't really want to live by, right? Like there's no stores around there, like so it's foul, like how they do people that's formerly incarcerated and are trying to change their life and be positive. So I encourage y'all, man. It's gonna be tough, especially if you've been formerly incarcerated and you got that on your record, because landlords do be looking at that stuff. And I guess sometimes it is important because maybe people don't want you don't want to have people with rape and pedophile cases. And at the same time, I also feel like there's no room for change. I feel like the moment they just looking at it, it don't matter what you're doing. It don't matter if you're a different person. It's just automatically like, what I'm saying, like this is just who you are, right? And So what I will advise y'all to do is, if you just came home and you trying to find a place and it's hard for you for whatever reason, I will advise you to sublet, right? To sublease. So if you go on Facebook, they got groups where they advertise rooms, right? They advertise, like, they looking for roomies, they're looking for roommates, and sometimes they even have in the description with the option to sign the lease. So I would say this: that's like the best bet. That's like the best thing you could do. That's also some of the things that I was into. Looking into places that maybe somebody owns the house and they're willing to rent you a room. So, excuse me, a lot of times you got to go on the underground. The problem with the underground is that sometimes if you don't know the people, you know what I'm saying, you can end up in a sticky situation, because you might be going into somebody else's home, and at the end of the day, if your name is not on that lease, that could be a problem potentially, right? But if you do know some people, and people try to put you on, or some people that know some realtors and they're willing to work with you, then that's even another blessing. I had somebody that was willing to work with me. She knew somebody that was a realtor and stuff like that. But other than that, yeah, I encourage you to sublease. And sometimes, once people see your character, once people see you pay, once people see you're clean, once a lot of times you're gonna have to prove yourself. Once you've been incarcerated, you're gonna have to work twice as hard, to prove yourself, because people are gonna be watching you a certain way. So sometimes you just gotta let people gain people trust, and then go from there, right? So that's what I would encourage you to do. I would encourage you to sublease, get in where you fit in, get in where you could get in, let people see your character, and then hopefully you're able to sign the lease. And then once that is on your jacket, once that report is on your record, then you will have an easier job. You will have an easier opportunity to get other places and get other things. So that's just my advice. That's just how it is in the shelter system. It's an outside prison, if you ask me. And the best bet for you to get on your feet is subleasing, I think, right? Because your name not really on the lease, but people get to see that you pay your money and people can vouch for you. So let me know what y'all think. That's just my opinion on how on what will work, because based on like what I experienced. So let me know what y'all think, though. If y'all got other tips too about how to find housing when you come home, let me know in the comment section. Peace.